Hello and welcome to the trade setup. In this video we are looking at Spotify. This was a stock analysis request from one of the followers, and I wanted to let you know that anyone can make these requests and I will most likely cover them, especially if there is an actionable trade setup to follow. Now in the case of this chart, we are tracking a seemingly simple structure where, yeah sure, you may even look at this and consider a 1, 2, 3 complete, look for the 4th and the 5th, and it is somewhat similar with what I am tracking, but I believe there are more details that need to be pointed out on this chart, because within this pattern to the upside, and of course we start our uptrend tracking from the all-time low that has formed here in November 2022, but I am looking here at an initial wave 1 up and here at a wave 2 bottom, and sure, I am tracking this as the wave 2 bottom. But based on the structure that has formed within this wave 2, it is a bit shallow, and it does point out to the fact that this structure could be in an overall larger premature completion, where I could consider this the wave 1 up, a wave 2 down, a third wave up, fourth wave down, and then this could be the 5th wave, yeah? Based on the proportions, I would be able to track this as the 4th and the 5th, although based on the internal structure of this wave 3, I would still like to see several highs before I would assume a larger top being already formed. Now, with that said, it is brought into light because we also haven't managed even to get here to the first level of support within this correction in wave 2, and even though we got relatively close, we didn't manage to get even here, even to the 38.2% retracement, and this doesn't seem just like a tiny distortion. Yeah, we did stop a bit away from this area of support, a couple of percentages it seems, yeah, here like 3% away from the area of support, and technically it can be accepted, it is fine, although that is my point, that this structure could be overall complete, and it's not necessarily as high probability as I would track other charts. For example, on the Eli Lilly and Company chart, we have a much more reliable structure going on where we can more reliably track here 4th and 5th patterns forming to the upside, where again, even on that chart, we have just formed the core wave 3. Well, something similar is happening here, but on a smaller scale, and what I am tracking is this idea of a third wave formed in this area, and then largely I'm tracking a 1, 2, 3, and I'm looking here for the wave 4 correction. Now, in this correction, in the wave 4, we have already reached the 38.2% retracement, which is the ideal target for a wave 4. So from this perspective, we have succeeded perfectly. And not only that, with the initial push lower, we retraced higher from the first level of support from around the 23.6% retracement before heading back into the area of support. We may even be able to argue that this overall pattern to the downside has formed a 3-wave move, although right now I would still prefer extensions lower, which assumes that this correction in the wave 4 would extend even more, allowing me to consider even more the possibility of a larger pattern being complete. But still, as long as we hold here the 50% retracement, and again, don't necessarily extend out of proportions within this wave 4, I do find it decently reliable to be tracking this area of support for continuation to the upside in a 5th wave. Now, this area of support goes all the way down to the $500 level, yeah, the 50% retracement, and as long as we hold this, we can still look for the 5th wave. That this is the main idea. Now again, within this structure, I would still prefer further extensions because I don't really see any participation even in the broader market relief rally that is forming across many charts, and some of them may have already even bottomed within their corrections, but on this chart, I don't see that movement, yeah, and I wouldn't expect it to, because within this structure to the downside, I would actually argue that this is a 1, 2, a third wave down. I'm looking now for a 4th wave up and then a 5th wave to the downside. If this really is to form a wave C down, I would expect still another low, in which case I would track this as a 1, 2, yeah, here we can even label it, and as long as we hold here below the area of support for the respective wave 4, for the larger time frame perspective, I will need to keep the pressure down. I will need to look for extensions lower, and I wouldn't even necessarily expect this correction to end too quickly unless we actually continue in this downtrend in the wave 3, which technically is still possible. Yeah, I have to say, on this chart, something even more bearish could be going on, and even though from a large time frame perspective we have gotten to the ideal target in the wave 4, I'm not convinced that we have bottomed. I am still looking for lower prices as long as we hold here below the 61.8% retracement, which goes all the way up to the $664 level. Now, if we manage to break here above this level, well, I would be quite inclined to believe that this overall pattern to the downside is done, and I wouldn't be looking for any additional lows. And technically, I do have a quite specific scenario that could allow an earlier completion, but it is not necessarily a high probability interpretation for me. And here, as long as we don't have a more reliable, at least an internal structure to the upside in a 5-wave move, I would not really be looking for a setup to be formed in this area, at least, again, not in this small time frame. If you are accumulating from a large time frame perspective, sure, we are quite deep into the area of support, and it could have bottomed. We don't absolutely need additional lows, but the structure suggests to me that they could easily appear. Yeah, the momentum to the downside has actually increased in the last few weeks in this area, where I could argue that this is an impulse that formed to the downside and it may be complete, but again, even this movement down, it could also extend itself. Now, with that said, within this structure, within this wave C, I am tracking an ending diagonal in this case, and I would consider this an ABC structure, where now I would be looking for an ABC structure in the wave 4. And even though it is not participating with as much strength in the relief rally or the reversal of the broader market, it has started it as well. And that is why I am open not to necessarily look for direct continuation lower, but I do have the ability to track here an internal area of resistance for a possible wave 2. Now, in fact, I could actually even argue that this may be a large 1, 2, 3, 4th and the 5th. In that case, we have pushed into the first level of resistance before getting rejected, the 23.6% retracement, but this isn't necessarily a high probability interpretation for me. If I were to be tracking even this larger scenario that would allow us to extend lower, I would still be looking for a likely completion for the wave 3 for now, unless we extend directly lower, but I won't be tracking that primarily. I will be tracking here, however, a possible initial 1-2 setup, but again, even in this case, it is within the larger area of resistance, so there shouldn't be too much focus, too much division. I just wanted to show you different interpretations that could work out. Now, I want to recap a bit, and again, from the large time frame perspective, if we fall here below the 50% retracement, the $501 level, it would have quite bearish implications. I wouldn't even necessarily look for larger structures to actually allow extensions still within this wave 3. In fact, I might not even look for the larger wave 4 to be forming in that case, and I would probably directly shift to a different interpretation where, yeah, I may consider this 1, 2, 3, 4th and the 5th pattern complete, and I would be prepared for a more significant correction in a wave 2, where the area of support would be quite far away from any current levels that we should be tracking, and really the levels would start at the 38.2% retracement at the $311 level. So if we fail to hold here the $501 level, it would be a signal to me that this overall structure could reach into those much deeper levels, and any pattern that could be used as a setup to follow this failure of an extension directly higher, would be a much lower probability and not necessarily something I would consider worth tracking actively for a trade setup, since there are so many other better options right now. Then, as always, if we form in the smaller time frame, even after a failure, an initial 5-wave move to the upside, we can explore such an opportunity, but from a large time frame perspective, it would not be a high probability scenario for me, at least not until we get this initial movement, this initial level of confirmation. And for now, these are the levels, this is the trade setup. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, don't forget to subscribe and let me know what else you want me to cover, and I'll do my best to do that in the days and weeks ahead. And until then, I hope you have a nice day, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye bye.